Hello and welcome to the Movie Pope podcast. And today we are being joined by the guys from the StoryProof podcast, Bradley and Brendon, and we are going to be taking a look at Wicked and Wicked for Good. And Wicked for Good is up on the list for nominees for the Oscars for this year. So it's one of the reasons why we're talking about it, but also because it's us getting out of our comfort zone. We rarely talk about musicals. We rarely review them on this channel. So it'd be a good chance for us to actually take a look and see what exactly all the fuss is about. But before we dive in, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and be sure to check out our channel as well as StoryProof podcast. These guys are doing a phenomenal job, and they love movies as much, if not more, than Lee and myself. But I'm just trying to butter you up, guys. But today, I want to say this is more of a StoryProof podcast episode than it is a movie pope, because really, when it comes to musicals, Lee and I we're out of our depth here. Like we sort of know what musicals are. We know it's like a play, but everybody sings sometimes instead of just telling people how they feel about each other. So really, we're going to defer to Bradley here, because Bradley, your CV is pretty much replete with a lot of musical theater. I know what when we spoke a while back, you directed Godspell, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you also have a pretty in-depth, is in-depth the right word? Intimate familiarity with Wicked, because you said you've seen it on Broadway several times.
Yeah, so I've seen a number of shows on Broadway. I've seen a number of shows on tour. This is the only show that I've seen on both. So
Okay.
I went the year after I got out of college. The choir from Mars Hill, which is where I went, that we were asked to perform in Carnegie Hall. So because my roommate Tyler and I were still students at the time, they were like, well, because this plan is going to be like a 2 to 3 year planning process, you guys can still be part of the choir. So we went up to New York on our own, got to sing in Carnegie, and we were like, let's go see a show. He was like, let's go see Phantom. We looked at ticket prices. He's like, let's go see something else. Because I think at the time, now this was, oh my God, this was 2017, 2018 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
The least expensive ticket for Phantom at the time was like $320. Which,
really?
Yeah. Now theater shows can be expensive. That's pretty up there.
What's the average normally for a Broadway show? Because if 300 is like the extreme, like what would be the median, would you say?
Well, now I will say 300 is extreme for it being the lowest price ticket. If you want, center middle row, depending on the night, you might spend $1,200-$1,500.
Okay.
But average, I will say we went to see Wicked. Our tickets were maybe $160 when all was said and done.
Okay, so that's not bad, $160.
Yeah, and when I go, because I go to Charlotte a lot to see shows when they come in on tour, I'm probably going to see 4 of them in the month of May this year, because everything I want to see is coming to Charlotte at the same time. Usually the tickets I get, they're like, I call them the middle class tickets, because I'm not in the back row, I'm not in the front, I'm in the middle somewhere. The ticket itself is usually about $90, and then when ticket companies get done doing their stuff, it's usually about $150.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty comparable to Broadway. When we saw Wicked in New York, we were center of the front row of the balcony. So I feel like it was the perfect seating for this, because I will say, if anyone has ever seen the staging of Wicked, there's a lot. Like some shows you go see, it's very like laser focused. It's like you're following maybe 1 or 2 people on stage at a time. I mean, Wicked, they've got so much stage magic going on. There's a giant metallic dragon that sits above stage. There are so many things where, like, if you're really close, I'm hesitant to say you might miss some things, because it's just hard to see everything that goes on. And I will say that seeing this on tour and on Broadway, the only difference I noticed was, I guess a little bit of a spoiler for the end, when she quote unquote melts, is they don't have a trap door when they go on tour. But even the only person in the audience who noticed was me, because I was looking for it. because I'm like, how are they going to do this without a trap door, which they have in New York? And you can't notice. There's no difference. She just hides behind a little cabinet.
But that does lead me to another point too, because because Wicked and the Wizard of Oz itself, I mean, it does require a certain level of stagecraft that you normally wouldn't see in something, something like Guys and Dolls, or
Yeah.
or South Pacific or anything like that, because you're talking about bringing to life a fantasy world, right? And as we'll discuss in Wicked and Wicked for Good, there are a lot of moving parts that go into making us believe that you are in Oz. And I would say, like, in terms of attending a Broadway musical, or even seeing the Broadway musical on tour in Charlotte or wherever, there is a certain expectation where you kind of have to up your game a little bit more than how you would normally do it, because you want the audience to kind of buy into the fact that you are transporting them to the land of Oz, right? And Oz itself is a pretty big country, because we see we see scenes taking place in Munchkin Land, Winky Country, the Emerald City, Shiz University. So there's just so many moving parts in there. It's like everybody has to be on point, because one wrong move can kind of mess up the flow of the the musical.
Yeah. And the other thing that probably the thing that really impressed me the most when I saw this show, because I've seen a number of Broadway musicals, most of them, what you're doing is it's usually people stuff. I haven't seen shows that have a ton of like mechanical stuff built into it. I mean, I've seen a few, like Hades Town has a thing where the stage kind of opens up, and some of them have the circular spinning stage in the middle. That stuff's kind of cool. I mean, Wicked has all sorts of mechanical things built into the stage, so that when Nessa Rose in her wheelchair starts flying around stage, she's flying around stage. She's on like mechanical runners that are moving her around stage, and benches can go flying. The classroom scene, all the stuff flies around, and it's all automated. It's all on like runners and all sorts of things. When she is belting Defying Gravity, whoever's playing Elphaba is straight up swinging like 25 feet off stage and just belting to the heavens. I mean, it's incredible the amount of technical stuff that's built into this show. The giant head for Oz, when it comes out, is terrifying. It is the size of a big rig truck. It is absolutely gigantic, and it shows up out of nowhere. When they wheel that sucker on stage, it is out of complete darkness, and then it's on stage in like 2 seconds.
What about the
coolest stuff?
What about the flying monkeys too? Because the flying monkeys do factor a lot in that, the story as well.
Yeah, so the flying monkeys have the most terrifying part of the show, because there is a part of the stage backdrop that's covered. So it's like the Emerald Castle at that scene, where it looks like it screens. So you're like, oh, that's just part of the backdrop. Well, then she casts a spell, nothing happens. The wizard pulls a thing, and the backdrop falls. And it's all these people in the outfits, and what now you see are cages. And they're like grabbing the bars, and they're screaming, and they're like, it is horrifying. But it comes out of absolutely nowhere. And it's so freaking cool. And this show is so fast. The stuff that happens, it does just kind of come out of nowhere. It is technically the most impressive show I've seen. I mean, it is pretty stunning when you see it.
And I was gonna say, like, I was gonna say too, like, that's the make or break for anybody who's working in tech theater as well. Like, that's like almost James Cameron level stuff. Like, you kind of have to be on your game, because you can't really be a slouch when you're doing something like this. Brendon, have you had any experience with Wicked, or is this the first time you've kind of been introduced to the whole Wicked Oz universe kind of thing?
I've never seen it on stage. So the movies were the first like performance that I've seen of it. The musical, I've listened to the soundtrack multiple times, because Wicked's always been this cultural phenomenon, especially amongst like people like Bradley and I, who were in like band in high school, and we did music throughout our lives. So Wicked's always been this thing that's there. And once I really started listening to musical theater and getting into musical theater a bit more, I was like, okay, I should listen to this, you know. So, but yeah, this is the only full experience I've had with Wicked so far.
Yeah, and really the only song that I know of that kind of that I usually associate with Wicked is Defying Gravity.
Yeah.
And pretty much I think, I mean, Bradley, would you say like that's the definitive song of Wicked, or can you think of like others that kind of might give Defying Gravity a run for its money?
I mean, that is the song from the show, but I will actually say For Good is pretty up there.
Okay.
I know For Good is done at a lot of high school graduations. Like, so many high school which, I mean, it's a perfect song for it.
Yeah.
But that and For Good, I would say, are like the two that are up there. As Long as Your Mind is a pretty commonly performed song because it is the rare male and female duet for musical theater that lets both of them really have a moment to shine. Usually with a duet, you'll have one person who really gets the spotlight and the other person's like, I'm in the background, yay, doo-wop, doo-wop. So it's nice to have a duet where both of them really get to kind of show off a little bit. But no, Defying Gravity, I mean, it is and it, even before the movie came out, I mean, it was the absolutely like the well-known song from this show.
Yeah, and the one I'm familiar with is the one with Idina Menzel singing it. So
Yeah,
I mean, so to see someone else sing it, I'm like, okay, like I guess that's great, but you're sometimes you're kind of just wedded to that one version, and like that's the only version that kind of works for you. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I get that 100%. I get that a lot with Idina Menzel's versions of a lot of these because I've heard them so much that I will admit I'm a bit of a musical purist. When I hear people all of a sudden start riffing on stuff, I'm like,
yeah,
it's that thing where you like lightly slap them in the face and you're like, no, bad. Like that. I do feel that way a lot, and I will say that
you don't. You do the whole Jon Snow, nothing kind of thing.
yeah, I'm like, bro, come on. But I will say in the last maybe year or two, I've come around on that a little bit because then there is a certain point of, as a performer, if you don't put your spin on it, are you just doing an imitation of someone else? I'm like, well, there's a certain part of that where the answer is yes and no. Ultimately, I like to do it as written, but as a performer, there are some things I've changed where I'm like, this doesn't work or it's not impressive enough. So I was like, I'll change it a little bit. But a very common thing I hear is people doing what in theater is called optional up, where you make something higher to make it sound more impressive. I just did a show recently where someone did it at the end of a beautiful love song, and I was so furious because I'm like, you just ruined this. Like, and I will say the show is Titanic, and it's literally the love song between the Strausses as they're dying, and to all of a sudden be belting to the heavens at the end of it, you motherfuckers! Like it ruined the end of that beautiful moment, and I'm like, this is not the song to show off. You guys end on unison, on a perfect unison pitch because you're there together. You're going down together. You don't need the woman screaming into the heavens. It's dumb. It's bad.
So it's kind of like that, learn how to read the room scenario kind of thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, I saw a version of Legally Blonde a couple years ago where these two people tried to option up everything, and I'm like, you just sound like you're screeching. Please stop. Like this sounds bad. And this is coming from a belty tenor. I want stuff about as high as I can get it, but it's kind of there is a time and place. But I will say that No Good Deed Goes Unpunished, parts of Defying Gravity, and then As Long as You're Mine, I have heard people just completely rewrite the entire song, and I'm like, you're doing a bit too much.
Yeah.
Like just you've lost the melody, you've lost the plot a little bit.
Kind of makes you wonder if Steven Schwartz isn't like ripping what's left of his hair and just saying, "You motherfuckers."
And you know what fucking kills me is he says that he's okay with it. He does like the idea. So he also, Steven Schwartz actually did write the music for Godspell. And there was a version he originally did of, was it maybe God Save the People? There was some song that he did that he ended up reworking because he heard someone do a different version of it. He's like, I actually like their version more. So then he changed the way that the song was written in the show.
Oh,
So he's
Lord.
very open, which, I mean, hey, kudos to that performer. But so he's very open to it. I don't know, man. I will say I'm definitely of a place where I'm one of those people, like, I think you need to learn the rules before you can break them. So I'm like, if you can't sing them, so often when I hear people do riffs and runs, it's because they can't keep pitch.
Mhm.
So as a musical person, I'm like, you're doing a lot of runs because you're not competent enough of a musician to actually hold this pitch. So I like, it's a cop out for a lot of people. So I don't like
But
vocal runs very much.
But wouldn't you also say that the blame also falls on the casting? Because if the casting isn't aware of how the musical is written and how it should be performed, and they cast someone who isn't really 100% qualified to meet those requirements, doesn't the onus fall on them because they kind of misunderstood what the work is about and what the original, I guess, what the original score was meant to be before they brought in someone who decided, I think I'll sing it in this key instead of that key, and I think I'll sing it, at a higher octave than the octave it was meant to be sung at.
Oh yeah, 100%, like 100%. I could not tell you how many times I have been on the side of the table where I'm a music director, and what the director's like, oh, we should cast such and such as this role, and I have to look in the eyes and like, if you do that, it's going to sound like shit. This person can't sing this part. Like,
Mhm.
you want them because you think they look good, they're going to look good in the role. I'm telling you, they're going to make you bleed from your ears because they can't sing to save their life. I have gone. One of my friends was in a show where she was the understudy for Joanna in Sweeney Todd. I
Yeah.
heard the girl who was the actual Joanna. She sucked. She was horrible, but she was very thin. She was very attractive, and I'm sure she flitted around the stage, but she sounded like shit. Every time she opened her mouth, I'm like, God, can we fast forward through this part, please? Whereas my friend who was the understudy, one of the best voices I know of. And I'm like, this annoys me how often I see crap like that, where
Yeah.
someone gets cast because of a look as opposed to how well they fit the part.
Well, it also kind of it also kind of leads me to the point where as I'm watching Wicked and Wicked for Good, I'm wondering if these characters were cast mainly because of the way that they look, right? Jeff Goldblum, he played the Collector in the Marvel movies, so obviously he would have the perfect look to play the Wizard, right? But you kind of have to wonder, did they not kind of overreach themselves on that point, or Ariana Grande, like, yes, she's a great singer. I mean, she's a great pop singer, but at the same time, her acting chops kind of leave you, wanting to, a little bit more. Shall we say? Lee, Lee, I do want to get your input on this, and I want to preserve your voice as much as possible. But have you had any experience or any introductions to Wicked prior to watching these movies?
No, I have not. I did see Clue once, so that's about as much play presence I've seen.
Okay, gotcha. Well, let's go ahead and dive into Wicked, gents. So Lee, like I said earlier, Lee is a little bit under the weather, so Bradley and I will go ahead and take point on this discussion here. But Lee was able to give us his outlines for both movies. So let's go ahead and get started here. So the movie kicks off basically with Glinda in Munchkinland, and everybody's celebrating. Everyone's just having a good time. They're like, "Yay, the Wicked Witch is dead!" Just, kind of what you expect from the original Oz movie. And one of the characters, pipes up, "Hey, is it true that you were friends with the Wicked Witch?" And that kind of creates a bit of an awkward moment. Um, and I gotta say, like, throughout the movie, Glinda, or Golinda, as she prefers to be called, she kind of rubs me the wrong way because because having seen the original Wizard of Oz movie, you're kind of indoctrinated with this idea that Glinda is supposed to be the embodiment of good. She's this good person who only wants the best for people. She helps out Dorothy and she tries to guide people as best as she can. Here, we're introduced to someone who, well, I mean, there's no other way to say this. She's a bit of a bitch, really. I mean, it's kind of it's sort of like, Mean Girls, meets Matilda meets Shrek kind of thing, really. And that's actually in Lee's notes, by the way. It's kind of like Shrek meets Matilda. But then we get introduced to Elphaba's origin story, where her mother is giving birth, and out pops Elphaba, and the poor thing is green, and her father is basically horrified. He's like, well, what the fuck is this? Like, my child is green. I think I'll do what the Spartans do and just like toss her off a cliff. But Dulcibert, who is the talking bear / nursemaid, decides, you know what? I think I'm going to go ahead and, do you a solid, and I'll look after her. and I gotta say, like, right off the bat, like, Elphaba is dealt a really, really shitty hand in life, right? Because as the movie progresses, like, John Chu like pulls no punches. Like, he just wants you to see that Elphaba is everyone's punching bag, right?
Yeah.
So I want to go ahead and have you guys kind of like offer your thoughts on the beginning of this movie and your thoughts on Elphaba as as this sort of cast off who kind of becomes the unwanted child with the powers that anybody would envy, really.
I will say that watching this with my mom the first time, she had the funniest line about, "Oh my God, she's green," and my mom was like, "That bear is talking. Why are they so amazed by this?"
See, exactly, Bradley.
Like, this world is so fantastical. The fact that she's green is one of the more normal things that goes on in this world.
I mean, she's got 2 legs, 2 arms, and a head, so I mean, she's pretty normal by all accounts,
Yeah. There is also the thing where you kind of find out that the reason she is green is that her mom was, if not having a full-blown affair, was at least having, I guess, a couple of one-night stands with just a person who has this green elixir that he drinks and she drinks, and all of a sudden, boom, green baby. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I will say, for me, I like the way that Glinda is done, particularly in the movie, because by the end of the second movie, you're like, okay, this is really her stepping into the position of being good, as a, because the biggest thing, like, through line through any of the, like, because we were talking about the books earlier, I think I remember from the books that the Emerald City is the reason it's emerald is because they paint it to make it look like something other than what it is.
Yeah.
That through line is the thing of these movies. So much of it, Glinda goes along with Madame Morrible and the Wizard's plans because they keep saying, "Oh, it's in the best interest of everyone. It's for the good of people." And at the end of the second movie, she's like, "No, fuck you guys. You're not good. I'm gonna go be good." So I do like the progression of her. I will also say, for me, I thought Ariana Grande crushed it.
Really?
Acting and singing, because if again, watching this on Broadway, I cannot tell you how almost exactly like Kristen Chenoweth she is. The way that she does the dramatic throwing of herself on the bed, all of the super almost overacting of how dramatic she is
Yeah.
absolutely on point for the character.
Well, what about the trills? Because I noticed that Ariana Grande does all those trills. Did Kristen Chenoweth
Oh yeah, because Kristen Chenoweth is like on the verge of an opera singer for a lot of this stuff. So like at the end of well, we haven't quite gotten there, but like thank goodness, at the start of the second movie, when she is like an octave or 2 higher than everyone else, that's straight out of the musical. Because I went into this being like, oh my, because Cynthia Erivo, I have said long before she was ever in these, I'm like, she might be the most talented singer I know of.
Yeah.
When she did The Color Purple, Jesus, dude. I mean, you want to talk about bringing the house down? It was unreal. So when they cast her, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, that makes sense. And then they're like, Ariana Grande, and I'm like, you have got to be shitting me. What a terrible decision. This is horrible. You put a pop singer in here. And then literally at the end of No One Mourns the Wicked, I was like, you know what? I may have called that putt a little early.
Well, yeah, let's go to that point, because Ariana Grande, you kind of have to wonder what exactly can she bring to the table besides being a pop singer and having the pipes to sing, because it's kind of like what we saw with Joker Folie à Deux, where Lady Gaga is in, and it's like, well, what else can she bring besides being able to sing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you heard the news, apart from smashing everything in the house and just going to a fury, did you kind of have any ideas as to who might have been a better replacement for Ariana Grande before the first movie came out?
To be honest, if it was me, I'm always going to pull someone from Broadway. I'm going to
Okay.
do it. The Mean Girls musical movie that came out recently, Renee
Yeah.
Rapp was in that, and you can tell vocally she crushes just about everyone in that movie. That's what happens when you pull someone from Broadway as opposed to a pop singer. The
Right.
one honestly, what I first thought of was Nick Jonas, because Nick Jonas he's like, oh, I've been on Broadway. I've been on Broadway. Yeah, I heard you in Les Mis. I heard Alfie crush you like the hand of God. Like I've heard what happens when you put a pop voice, and not really that he did a bad job, but when you take that quality of voice and you put it next to a Broadway singer or someone from the West End, it's not the same, dude. It is
Yeah.
just, it's not the same.
Well,
So
also too, because no offense to pop singers out there, but pop singers, they're not undergoing the same level of training as as musical theater actors and actresses, right? Because
yeah,
because when for someone like Ariana Grande, I don't think she ever went to Juilliard or any of these conservatories to kind of like hone her skills as a singer, right? Because when it comes to because when it comes to singing these numbers, there's like a certain level I guess I guess a fitness or endurance you need to have as opposed to a pop singer where you're only having to hold the notes for like a few seconds, whereas here it's a little bit longer. Am I right, or am I kind of like
yeah,
in the
that's
wrong
part of
direction?
it. A lot of it comes down to like quality of voice, so the like warmness of tone, the depth of your voice. A
Yeah,
lot of pop stars have really bright, tinny, shitty voices. They're very weak, and they're only good for 2 minutes at a time
yeah,
to
because
get a
they're
little earworm stuck in
and
your head, and then that's
and,
it.
and, and I would even add to that too, because most of them are actually, because they're not really relying on their voice so much, but they're kind of relying on like the backup band or the studio
Yep.
to kind of give them that boost, right? Because how many times have we listened to something on an album and then we see it performed live and you're thinking to yourself, this cannot possibly be the same singer. Like, there's
Yeah.
no way, you know.
Yeah, and then pop singers, you have to sing to a microphone right in front of you. When you're in theater, I cannot tell you how many times I have told people and had to tell people, I'm like, hey, that microphone on your face, that's a tool. It's not a crutch. You still have to sing. You still have to put some sound out. You've got to try to fill up as much of this room with your voice as you can, or no one's going to hear you. I can't turn nothing into something with a microphone attached to your face. That's just not how it works.
Mhm.
Um, Pop voices, I mean, they've got someone mixing in a studio to make them sound however they want to, as opposed to a lot of theater stuff where, like I said, at the end of Defying Gravity, bro, it is Elphaba hovering above everyone, belting for everything she's worth. There's no hiding in that. There's no
Right.
mixing that's going to save you. There's no one can no one can save you. It sounds so dramatic, but it's not up or shut up, dude, and it is so exposed. So yeah, to put a pop singer, I knew that Ariana Grande had done something on Broadway before. I just knew that in passing of her. But I really went into it with very low expectations. I thought she pleasantly surprised me. Now the character's weird. That is the one thing I will definitely say is um, Elphaba tends to be a bit more straightforward, whereas Glinda ends up being like so over the top for most of the, and again, even in the original show, she's very over the top. Um, I thought she nailed it, but it is a unique character to say the least.
Well, she's also very passive aggressive as well, because as
Oh
because
yeah,
as we'll see throughout the movie, she kind of puts on this face of, oh, I'm your friend and I definitely want to help you, but she does have ulterior motives, and as we'll see later on in Wicked for Good, there's this sort of like cattiness that begins to come out, especially when it comes to Fiero, right?
yeah.
Um, Brendon, I feel like we're leaving you out of the conversation. What are your initial thoughts on what we've seen so far with Glinda telling us the story of how Elphaba came to be?
Yeah, I'm gonna echo a lot of what Bradley said. I thought Ariana Grande was pretty good, honestly, myself. I had known that she had some Broadway training and background in the past, but I've never really been a big fan of her music personally. Like, I don't really know many of her songs. So I was also very skeptical. I had also seen some of the other people they had been considering for it. I know they had Amanda Seyfried had been talked about at one point. I I think maybe I can't remember, one of the two people from Mean Girls had been talked about. So like I was with Bradley. I was like, will Ariana Grande really be able to do it quite as well as like somebody with actual Broadway training? And I was, comparing her to Kristen Chenoweth myself, just because that's what I was familiar with from listening to the soundtrack.
Yeah.
But you can't be blamed for that, but you have to be open to the possibilities. I thought she was pretty good. I enjoyed the way that they presented this opening. I like a lot of verbal irony in my storytelling. So this, and thank goodness when we talk about Wicked Part 2, are very much my cup of tea in terms of how to open a story. Because the way that the wordplay that's involved in No One Mourns the Wicked, well, obviously the Munchkins are thinking one thing, but you can tell through Glinda's words and performance there's something very much else going on in what she's thinking and whom she considers to be the wicked amongst it.
And I will say, seeing the show live twice, I never got that. Seeing the movie, I got that. I think that carried a lot better in the movie than it does on stage.
Well, with filmmaking, I mean, you do have the benefit of focusing in on certain shots or certain characters and kind of allowing us to see a little bit more subtlety than what you would see on stage, because on stage you kind of get everything in one go, right? I mean, you really don't have the time to kind of focus on, oh, I wonder what's going on with this particular character, because everything's kind of moving all at once. Whereas here, it's like you kind of have a little bit more time to kind of focus on it, and it kind of helps that the director is kind of telling you where to focus your attention on. But
I will say, by the way, the pacing, because that is one thing that a lot of people complained about, the idea of turning a 2-act show into 2 movies. Like, oh, they can do the show in 2.5 hours. Why can't you do that? Is one thing about theater, is pacing will make or break any show you ever do. If it's too fast, people lose it. If it's too slow, people are bored. So you've got to find that sweet spot. So turning the first act into a movie, turning the second act into a movie, there are so many things that we get a lot more time with in the movie. All of the classroom stuff, when you see the show, is very, very short. The dance at the Ozdust Ballroom in the theater show, pretty short. And that, I'm like, that kills me, because that's my favorite moment of the show, is when they start to actually become friends and turn into something else. It's my favorite, I think, most beautiful part of the show. In the theater show, it's a great moment, pretty fast. So much of it has to go so much faster. And there's some things you don't even see. In the theater show, once the lion cub grows up, you never see it. Dorothy, you never see her. She's a shadow. I don't even know if there is a person playing her, or if they are honestly just doing a projection of a shadow of her throwing the bucket of water. So there's so much that you just don't even see, as opposed to getting a movie where you get a lot more time to kind of draw stuff out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it's like, okay, we've been here for a while, let's move on to the next thing. But yeah, the pacing, I think, is a lot friendlier in a movie, especially in this case when they split it in 2, because you get so much more time with whatever you want to show a bit more of.
But then there's also the point that, yes, you do get to focus on more things, in a movie than you would in a musical. But but then there are 2 questions that come to mind. The first one is, will the audience be receptive and patient with what you're trying to do and trying to give us a bit more development, as to what's going on here? And 2, what developments or what story arcs should you focus on? Because even though you have more, the luxury of time and special effects and everything with filmmaking, that doesn't necessarily mean you got to focus on every little detail that you probably wouldn't have been able to focus on, if you were staging a musical. You know what I mean? Because to your point, actually, this leads us into the next point here at Shiz University, because when we get introduced to Elphaba going to Shiz, right, she's just, she's pretty much just there to take her sister Nessa Rose and to kind of look after her, right? But then, Elphaba kind of manifests herself for the first time, and that catches Madame Warrible's attention. And she's like, oh, like, who's this person here? Like, I'm very much intrigued. And to your point, Bradley, what you said earlier, when you're doing the stage musical, there's a lot of moving parts, like literally that have to go into making us believe that Elphaba is doing all these spectacular things. Whereas here in the movie, it's a lot. I would say it's a little bit more effortless because you have the benefit of CGI and you have the benefit of time of actually letting it kind of build up. Because as I was watching that scene, I felt like there was like this sense of anticipation, like I know something's about to happen, but but when is it going to happen? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair.
Uh,
There is also a funny thing. I don't know if people, because I think it's one of those things that you can definitely like blink and you'll miss it. Brendan, you might have to help me with the name. I feel like I always mispronounce her name. The Kiala Settle.
Yeah.
Okay. She played, I feel like the thing people know her from is she played the bearded lady in The Greatest Showman. She is the woman in this movie who's like, I'll take care of her. I'll push her. Oh, I got this. I got this. She is the one I thought they were going to cast as Madame Morrible. When I saw she was in this, I'm like, okay, yeah, obviously. She's a perfect casting for this. And then it turns out she's just a headmistress of shiz, and she gets all of 3 lines in 2 movies. I'm like, this woman has the voice of an angel. What are you doing? Use her more. But yeah, I just like the fact that she's the one who just tries to rush her off.
Yeah, and that's actually a very interesting point because Michelle Yeoh ends up playing Madame Morrible, which no shade against Michelle Yeoh, she's a great actress, but I kind of felt like that might have been a bit of a miscue. Like, does Madame Morrible play a much bigger role in the musical, or do you think they kind of just downgraded her significance to kind of put more emphasis on Elphaba and Glinda?
So in the musical, you see significantly less of Madame Morrible and the Wizard than you do in these movies.
Okay.
I mean, significant. I think Madame Morrible is on stage, God, a handful of times. Important character, very, very important character, but she's not, here in these movies, we get a lot of scenes where it's like there are times where she is the like evil mastermind of everything. You only get a hair of that in the actual stage show. So, seeing more of her, I was fine with. Michelle Yeoh, she kind of sings her way through most of it. I'm fine with it. It didn't really bother me too much because that's not a super singy character.
Mhm.
But I also don't think you would have had to work that hard to find someone that maybe could have been a better fit. That is probably the most common complaint I've heard about these movies is why did you cast a non-singer in a singing part in a musical? I get it. I get people being upset about it. For me, it didn't really bother me that much. The character is not, like I said, not a big singing character. Because honestly, Jeff Goldblum, as much as I like him, he kind of sings his way through a decent chunk of this too. But Jeff Goldblum cheats because he's so fucking charming. I don't care. Like they could have cast him as Elphaba, and I'm like, sure, absolutely, let's go. So he cheats a little bit, but yeah, Michelle Yeoh, I really like her. I don't know if I've ever disliked her in anything I've seen her in, but if it were me, I would have cast someone else.
Yeah, because you mentioned Kiala Settle.
She's in the movie. Like, come on, man.
Yeah. So let's just go off tangent for a little bit. So if Kiala Settle had been cast as Madame Morrible, do you think maybe we would have gotten a bit more, more musical scenes with her rather than Michelle Yeoh just talking her way through these scenes, or what?
It's a little hard to say because I will say that Kiala, acting wise, I've only seen her in one movie, and it was The Greatest Showman. And she's a very, I think it's hard for her because everything I've seen her in, she's such a kind person. Because she also was the original Becky in Waitress, who is one of those friends that as soon as her friend starts having trouble, she's like, I'll take care of you. I'll watch out for you. She is such a kind person. I do think the idea of her playing someone who's so like lawful good that it's evil in a way, I think that would be interesting. I don't know how she would do acting wise just because I've never seen her do anything like that. But I'm not gonna lie, if it were me, I would have cast her in a heartbeat. She would have been even without knowing she was in this movie, she would have been my first choice for Madame Morrible. I thought that she had played Madame Morrible on Broadway at some point in time, but I looked it up and I didn't see anything about it. But in my head, I had that thought that she had done it before.
Yeah.
And I will say that at least most of the versions I've seen, and I say this in the nicest way possible, most of the Madame Morals I've seen, they're kind of like bigger women. Usually they're a little more. Michelle Yeoh is very tiny.
They're
Usually
very stout. Would you say?
yeah, most of them that I've seen have been like larger people, and especially when they put on the giant. When you see her on stage, she's wearing this huge outfit. So when she moves around stage, she has such a stage presence. Because it's especially funny when she's setting up Elphaba for The Wizard and I. Elphaba is this tiny, tiny little presence on stage with her little glasses, and her hair is like in a ponytail, and then Madame Morrible is just owning the stage. I just think of someone who's bigger than life, and Michelle Yeoh in the nicest way possible. Just it's not that acting wise or stature wise.
And it kind of goes back to that point you were making earlier about how some directors will cast someone just based on their looks, but not really give too much thought about any other of their musical abilities, really, right? Because again, I mean, I feel like Michelle Yeoh was terribly miscast, and that's nothing against her. It's just that if you want someone to play a villainous character, sure. I mean, she does have a sizable CV where she has played villainous and manipulative characters, but I would figure someone like Madame Morrible would kind of have a bit more going for her than just being like this scheming, devious person who's the right hand man of the wizard, really.
Yeah, it is one of those things where I don't know if Michelle Yeoh was necessarily a bad choice. I just don't think you would have had to have worked very hard to find someone who fitted better.
Lee, do you have any thoughts on this at all?
No, I agree with you guys, and I think a lot of the times, like when we're talking about what makes sense in a play in theater versus a movie, and sometimes you want to have that strong movie presence, right? Sometimes like Jeff Goldblum, right? So he kind of transcends what you want to have just because he has such a strong movie presence that his maybe not so great singing abilities kind of get pushed to the side. So sometimes you have to find that balance where, hey, this character, even though we're talking about a musical, sometimes having someone that brings a greater presence is more important to the film and important to convey what you want to have. And to your point, right, Michelle Yeoh, you could have easily found someone that could have balanced that out better, and you still would have had the same result. So I think there definitely was an opportunity to do something a little bit different there.
Yeah.
On that part. Brendan, you there?
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that Michelle Yeoh was fine. I think she brought what they wanted her to bring. She was cast like right after she won her Oscar for Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they wanted a bit of that extra star power in there as well to kind of help sell the movie. I mean, obviously you had Ariana Grande in there already, but I think you wanted someone that had that stature in it to really kind of bring you in. At the same time, I think she was fine. I don't necessarily think she needed to be the best singer for this particular part, the way that they were using her. But yeah, I have no issues with it. I think that depending on how you wanted to portray it, she could have been a better option.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, because when we're introduced to Madame Morrible, she kind of comes off as someone who's very sympathetic to Elphaba, right? Because everybody else around her, Glinda is pretty much, giving these like thinly veiled insults to Elphaba, but Madame Morrible just comes off as someone who actually, at that time, seems genuinely interested in who Elphaba is as a person, especially with the power that she exhibits. And she even takes it upon herself to basically say, I'm going to tutor you in sorcery, which kind of gets under Glinda's skin. And we kind of see this back and forth throughout the movie where Glinda is looking for ways to kind of get back at Elphaba because Elphaba may, easily, got into that, I guess, tutelage that she's been vying for, right? Because Glinda is very much, she comes off as the spoiled girl whose parents never really told her no at all.
Oh yeah,
and
100%.
And what's funny too is that when we see that scene where Morrible actually takes an interest in Elphaba, and she says, I'm going, not only am I going to tutor you personally, but I will write a letter to your father and I will explain everything to him, and he'll agree to let you stay at Shiz. And the scene that really got to me, that made me laugh, was when Glinda's like, oh, I'll go ahead and volunteer, but she really doesn't know what she's volunteering for.
Yep.
And when she finds out, she's like, "Oh shit, what did I just do?" Because because before then she was making a huge brouhaha over how everybody else has to share a room, but she gets like the single suite all to herself, right? So
Yeah.
I couldn't. It kind of reminded me of Wednesday season 1, where Wednesday goes into her room and she finds she's sharing it with Enid, and Enid is like decorating like her side with pink and yellows and all these pastel colors. And I mean, seriously, I got Wednesday Enid vibes from those two. Like, did you guys not get the same vibe from what was going on here?
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good comparison, actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I even
Absolutely.
think about when they do the dance. Oops, sorry, Brandon.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
No, I was saying even like later on when they're at the dance and they're doing the dance, like I think to Wednesday and how she got super famous for kind of that dance number that she does. So it definitely popped up a few times where I was starting to get that parallel.
The first time I saw Wednesday, the first thing that popped into my head with the two of them and butting heads together was "What Is This Feeling?" because I was familiar with the song. So just one of them is so like perky and lively, and the other one's just kind of dour and serious about everything. It's like a perfect parallel between the two.
Well, also too, I mean, keep in mind, Glinda is very much like Enid, where everything is pink and yellow and bright colored. And
Mhm.
I mean, I mean, especially like later on where we see the scene where Glinda tries to give her a makeover. She's clearly like, yeah, I don't want this. Please take that flower out of my hair. I'm happy in black. I'm very much happy with that. And she and what I find even funnier too is when Glinda gives her that hat, it's like she's really excited about it in a way, because like this, she feels like that totally suits her,
Mm-hmm.
Bradley, what are your thoughts on that? On the whole Glinda and Elphaba dynamic that we see here?
I do actually think the Wednesday comparison is pretty good. I didn't really think about that. I mean, yeah, it's definitely one of those things where them having to share the room together is one thing, but I think the fact that Elphaba was accepted into the program that Glinda wants to be into is like the big. I think that's probably the biggest friction point between them, even other than the fact that, hey, you're green. And I do like that, because this is something that in the movie I do like the pacing of a little bit more, is that their friendship is a little bit more of a slow burn,
Right.
where, like I said, the theater show, you kind of gotta not bum rush it necessarily, but it is maybe a little faster.
Yeah, you kind of pick up the pace, really.
Yeah. But I mean, it's crazy how instantly they're going into, what is this feeling? I hate you. You suck. Oh, I've got an entire group of people singing about how much you suck. I was like, damn, okay. But Elphaba, she always takes it in kind, which I really enjoy about her character, is that pretty much everything that they're saying, you can tell she takes it to heart, but at least in the moment, she's still messing back with them. She's still able to keep being her character as opposed to just being a sad sack all the time. I do really enjoy that.
Well, I'll say this too. Like Elphaba, like I really do admire the fact that she's tough as nails, really, because she's not because from the very beginning, like this is someone who's had to deal with the fact that she's been ostracized all her life. So really, when Glinda and her friends start doing the whole Mean Girls bit, it's, I mean, for Elphaba, it's like an ordinary Tuesday for her. It's like, well,
yeah, it's just par for the course for her.
Yeah, it's like, oh, like I'm green. That's the best you can do. Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, that's
honestly,
actually the nicest thing you've ever said to me, actually.
yeah, honestly, that scene, like when they first meet her for the first time, and she's like, "You're green," and then Elphaba kind of like looks at her hands, like, oh, "I am green." I got such a chuckle after that because it's like, she's heard it 1,000 times, and her just playing dumb to it. It's like, oh, this is the first time I ever noticed I was green. Thanks for pointing it out. It's just such a nice,
Yeah,
smart ass comment that totally just made me enjoy the character right there.
agreed. Yeah, the way she played that was perfect.
Well, here's my thing, though, and I want to get your guys' take on this too, because because as the movie progresses, you kind of you find yourself rooting for Elphaba, right? Because she's green, she's the outcast, she's someone that everybody makes fun of because, well, pick your reasons why. But I kind of felt like maybe they could have been a bit more complex in how they approach this, because Glinda, at least in part one, she really doesn't have any saving grace. I mean, apart from being perky and friendly to everybody, right? But
Yeah.
I kind of feel like if they made Glinda a bit more, sympathetic, right? If they're given her equality, like maybe her parents didn't love her that much, so that's the reason why she's like this, is because she wants to kind of compensate and fit in. I think that would maybe give her a bit of a more redeeming quality, right? Whereas because in the flashback, you kind of get the sense that her parents have always been on her side. They've always been like, you can do whatever you want, Glinda. You are like the brightest star in the universe. And she, ate it up because, well, she's a kid and she's been spoon fed, this crap all of her life. But I feel like I feel like in terms of this movie, like it's kind of lopsided. Like everybody is supposed to feel bad for Elphaba because she's the victim in all of this, whereas everybody else is like, yeah, fuck you guys. You guys are bullies, and bullies are bad. So I just wanted to see what your guys' thoughts on that were.
Yeah, I would agree with you a lot
Yeah, go
on
ahead.
that. I feel like I would have liked to see a little bit more nuance, right? There's a scene that I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit here at the dance that was so well done, but then I also didn't feel like it was maybe as earned as it could have been if we saw a little bit more about Glinda, right? Glinda for now, this character, and I would like to see that a bit more because you're right, like it is very much like this lopsided. Elphaba's like obviously the character that you're wanting to root for, right? She's been ostracized her whole life, right? Treated different, and you can see just like everyone's just a huge like dick to her, right? Like for no reason other than she's got a different color skin, which I think Bradley, as you mentioned, right? We got munchkins, talking animals, and everything. Her being green is a far cry from the oddest thing that's out there. So the fact that they dwell on it is so odd to me. But we see that, and then on the other side, for Glinda, right? She's so nice, and she knows that her being nice gets her way, which is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like we see that a lot with characters where it's like, hey, I know if I act right, quote unquote, act good, if I put that performance out for people, I get the results that I want. And I wish that if maybe they did a little bit more. Luka, you brought up an excellent point, right? I would have loved that idea that Glinda having this positive energy all comes from a terrible upbringing, right? Because I think that would have helped the two characters kind of connect, right? Because both of them had, obviously, Elphaba had a terrible upbringing, right? So if they both had that shared dynamic where Glinda, came out on top because she just put on this overly nice persona, I think it would have helped Elphaba grow into her character more. So there's ways that you could have made that work that I think would have really enhanced that story.
And what's infuriating is the fact that Glinda is. She's so shallow and vapid. I mean, it's the equivalent. To Lee's point, it's the equivalent of showing your cleavage to the officer whenever you get stopped, so you don't get the ticket. Like, like that's the sense that I get from Glinda, because
I do that all the time.
Well,
it never fails.
Yeah, I mean, but
so I will say I slightly disagree. Not the cleavage part. That is whatever. I have no opinion on that.
I mean, can I just say that here at the Movie Pope and StoryProof, we love cleavage. So,
so if you think about the way that Glinda's story, hold on for just a second.
Yeah.
the way that Glinda's story goes is that everyone is nice to her all the time because she's pretty and she's pink, and of course, why wouldn't you be nice to her? Then she meets someone who is singing songs about loathing you. I hate you. I cannot stand you. So she's like, okay, whatever. I'm not going to win over this person, and they're green. Who cares? Screw that person. The reason the story takes a turn is because Glinda is dismissive to Bach. That is what kind of starts the entire change of their relationship, because he comes up and is like, oh, you're going to go to the dance. I'm going to wait for you all night. She's like, yeah, sure. That's weird. I don't even know your name. Hey, that other weird girl over there, why don't you go ask her out? Yeah. She's just dismissive to get him out of the way, to immediately be like, well, hello, Fiero. But that thing ends up being a nice thing for Nessa, who then tells Elphaba about it, who then has Elphaba be nice to Glinda, even while Glinda is giving her the hat that she's only given her to make fun of her. But that ends up being a nice enough thing that Elphaba then talks to Madame Morrible, let's have Glinda into class, and it becomes this crazy thing where Glinda all of a sudden is like, this person was really nice to me, even though they don't like me. This person is different than everyone else. They were really nice to me when they really didn't have as much of a reason to be. And in that moment, they are being laughed at because I was mean to them. And that is where I think we really get to start seeing not just the change in her relationship with Elphaba, but the change in her character, where all of a sudden she's like, as everyone's laughing, she's like, no, I don't want to be part of this anymore. So it's crazy how that happens from her being kind of mean and dismissive to a character whose name she can't even bother to learn. But it does kind of start a domino effect where all of a sudden she's like, I don't want to be this way anymore.
Well, to be fair to me, I mean, when she does that to Bach, it's not something that she calculated and said, well, if I do this, this, and this will happen. It was inadvertent, right? Like it came from a place of selfishness, but it ended up leading to something very good for both Elphaba and for herself at the end, because let's remember, Elphaba got into that tutelage with Madame Morrible that Glinda really wanted, right?
Yeah.
But it does lead me to the next point, and you mentioned this already, but I kind of feel like when things begin to pick up a little bit, because we do have that class with the professor, who, by the way, is voiced by Peter Dinklage. So I just thought it was pretty interesting, and with Peter Dinklage playing the Goat Professor. I'm just going to call him Professor Goat because I can't remember the name.
Dr. Dillamon.
Okay, thank you, Bradley. Thank you. But but that's when we begin to see Elphaba begin to take a bit more interest in what's going on, because before, even when Madame Warble's like, oh, you really fascinate me, I'm interested in your powers, allow me to teach you the ways of sorcery, right? Elphaba's she's very much blasé. She's like, okay, whatever, like I guess because you're the only person who is actually paying attention to me and is not being mean. All right, sure, why not? But but when he gives that lecture and talks about what's going on, like, you begin to see like a shift in Elphaba's way of thinking, right? Because keep in mind, I mean, this is someone who whose parents rejected her because she came out the wrong color, but then Dulcibert is basically saying, well, I'll go and take care of you, little one. So she's basically the surrogate mother that that she wasn't able to have with her own birth mother, right? So when the professor's giving that talk about it, you begin to see like this sort of awakening in Elphaba, where she's like, oh shit, like, this is going down. I've got to nail my colors to the mast, and I really need to step up, and I really need to start speaking out. And I think it's a bit interesting too how they kind of insert that message in there, because it's not the first time that we're going to see like these political messages get inserted into the Wicked story. Do you I mean, well, two questions for you, Bradley. One, was this a theme that kind of permeated throughout the musical? And two, do you feel like it kind of detracted from what we were expecting, from what we wanted to get out of this movie?
So it is in the original musical. It's not as heavy-handed Because I will say, Dulcibert, not in the stage show.
Mm.
The only animal you see in the entire show is Dr. Dillamon. And I'm not going to lie, he doesn't look like a goat. He looks like Beast from Beauty and the Beast. It's like, because it's a dude in a costume.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it is, God, the when I saw it on Broadway, Jesus, God, the dude they cast had to have been 6'6". I'm like, my God, this looks like the Yeti is on stage and he's supposed to be a goat. But anyway, there really is just a scene with something bad happening in Oz. So that and there's not the scene where the mural comes down. That isn't a thing. So the first time we see any kind of anti-animal sentiment is in that classroom. That's the first time we see any hint of any of that.
Mhm.
I think it hits a little more in the movie because you see immediately why she's so almost maybe not sentimental, but on the side of the animals because she was raised by one.
Yeah.
And they have always treated her well. I really, really like that because you don't get that in the stage show. In the stage show, I think it's much more about fighting any injustice you see as opposed to injustice against people I like or people I know. But it's another thing where in the stage show, it's a little rushed. I don't know if it hits as well because it becomes much more about instead of the political side of it, it really does just become Elphaba trying to save the animals as opposed to there's not as much propaganda in the stage show.
Yeah.
I'll say that where they in the movie where they've got the wanted posters for her and they've got them loaded into fucking like machine guns and they're launching them you don't really have that in the stage show.
Right.
So going into this, I saw how because ultimately in the movie, they've got to take more time to flesh things out because they have, whatever the 5 hours these movies ended up being together. I think you got almost twice as much time. So I do kind of like having that stretched out a bit more. But yeah, like the only animal you see in the original, I mean the flying monkeys you see, but yeah, the only animal you see in the original is the professor. So I kind of like it being a bit more stretched out, but at the same point in time, I don't know how necessary I think it was. I think that's something I've kind of been wondering about since I saw it. Because the political side of it, the propaganda side of it is much heavier in the movies. I don't know if I like it or not. Like I kind of do, kind of don't. So I don't know that I lean one way or another on it.
And like I said, I mean that becomes the cause that she's wedded to because that kind of drives her throughout the movie, right? Because when she goes to visit, the wizard in the Emerald City, she kind of brings up, hey, we those animals that that you've been going after. Is there any way you can kind of lay off of them for a bit? And as we get further into Wicked, Wicked for Good later on, I mean that becomes like this, almost like the main thing that she is focusing on, right? And almost the exclusion of everything else. But I would also add to like I totally agree with you. It's a bit heavy handed because it's like if you're trying to enjoy the musical the movie for what it is, this immersion into Oz and for us to see what this landscape is like and who are these people like. The talking animals are just one aspect of this universe. It's not like they're the main focal point, but obviously for Elphaba, they are the main focal point because they are in effect her family. Really, these were the creatures who raised her for most of her life. Did you guys have any other thoughts on the whole talking animal crusade that she goes on?
No, but Bradley, you brought up a really good point. That's something I think even upon rewatch, I didn't think much about is that Elphaba was raised by animals, right? That was her true family because she was disowned by her, humanoid parents, right? So that does kind of add a very interesting dynamic to it. It's that, hey, you know what? I'm all for the animals because, they're the ones that cared for me when everyone else turned their back. So that's a very interesting thing to think about. And that's not something I thought too much about even upon rewatch. I will say I still find it maybe odd that it's such a strong focal point, especially because like we know that there's something's amiss in Oz, right? Like we know it from the beginning, right? We know that there's something like it's too nice, and we know that there's something that's cracking behind the scenes. So it is something where having that little bit, I think, helps explain the crack. I just don't know how much in this kind of magical world that you want to focus on that particular subject. It feels like that's the driving force of everything. But I feel like the characters, they have so much going on with them. It was a lot more interesting for me to know about, how all these characters interact with each other more than like, obviously you throw a whole bunch of animals out there. There's even the point in the classroom, right, where we see a lion cub and it's in a cage. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so heavy-handed. Like, obviously everyone's gonna look at that and be like, y'all a bunch of assholes, right? Like, we're all watching this. They're just torturing this poor animal. I think if maybe you added a bit more nuance to it, you could have had it more organically in there. So you brought up something I didn't think about. I still don't know how much of that should have been the focal point, especially on her journey to meet the wizard at the end. It feels like when she first started her journey, right, she wanted to meet the wizard for different reasons. And then by the end, it's like, oh, you know what? It's all about the animals now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fair. And the animals part is so much more of a focus in the movies, to the point that I'm curious. I would be very interested to know why that focal point was made as important as it is. Because I don't know that it takes away anything, but it does, I think, kind of change like I said, the because really in the stage show, dude, so much of it's about these two friends. Once they have that dance, from then on, so much of the show is just about them desperately trying to be happy together, but their lives are pulled in very different directions. That is like the focus of the musical, and it just keeps not working out. And by the time For Good happens, everyone's crying, and it's great. But yeah, the animals are, I feel like, a surprisingly small part of it. But that honestly could be because you only ever see one of them. That might be why it just doesn't hit the same as. I will also say the thing in this one where the animals have torn up the yellow brick road and they're fleeing. Again, that's not a thing in the stage show. At the end of the stage show, when Fiero and Elphaba leave, they just leave. There's not the whole go to the world beyond or whatever. That's not a thing. So they do change a bit of it based around the animals. So I don't know if maybe that's something they wanted to do, and just, I mean, I imagine having 30 people in animal costumes on a stage would be a bitch and a half. So maybe they wanted to go that way with the original show and just didn't. So yeah, I would be very interested to hear from. I'm not sure if that was a Chew thing specifically or the writers, but I would be interested to know why they made that like the focal point.
But I mean, like,
second.
But I mean, if you're gonna, my thing is, if you're gonna focus on a certain point, there's got to be a payoff at the end, right? Because otherwise, you're just focusing on, on this particular issue just for the sake of it, right?
Yeah, this payoff ended up being negative because of that bitch ass lion. I hate that lion. Oh, I hate that lion so much in these movies.
We'll get to that. We will get to that in due time, Bradley.
Brendon, they made the cowardly lion too cowardly. God damn it, man.
Hey, nobody shit talk the scarecrow. All right, we've got a line in common. We're both afraid of fire. Okay, Brendon, did you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think the main reason that they made this choice was to sort of play up the ostracization that Elphaba has had. So she, as we've talked about, was kind of denied by her family because of her appearance. She was raised by the animals. So then then she's rejected by pretty much everybody in society, except for those who are outside of society.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the reason that they play up the animal rights thing so much in this is because they're trying to draw this parallel between the in crowd versus the other. And Elphaba has very much been a part of the other, so she identifies much more with the struggles of, okay, these people were once accepted and equal, and now they're slowly being pushed away and devalued and, for lack of a better word, dehumanized in some ways, the same ways that she has. So I think that from a narrative standpoint is what they're going for. with playing up the animal rights so much.
Yeah.
Having not seen the musical and only hearing what Bradley's been saying about it, I don't know how much more heavy-handed they've been with it. It seems like they probably were. I agree that it really doesn't go much of anywhere, which is very frustrating to me narratively. I mean, it seems like its only point in the end when it comes to Wicked for Good is to set up that they're leaving Oz, so there's a place where Elphaba can go once she decides to leave Oz, and that she can't actually finish changing it from the inside anymore.
Yeah.
But like that, it doesn't exactly work the best for me.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like I kind of feel like they just shoehorn that in because let's face it, a lot of Hollywood movies today, they have to have some sort of political message to kind of act as social commentary for what's going on today. Lee, you and I did a review of One Battle After Another. I think we both came to the conclusion that they were very heavy-handed in their political messaging. But Brendon, to your point, I mean, when we talk about Elphaba not really having anyone, right? Everybody kind of like looks at her and just says, "Well, you're green, so you're mean, so I don't like you," right? But there is one individual who seems to have quite a fascination with her, and that's Prince Fiero, all the way from Winky Country. And Fiero comes in. He kind of reminds me of this character from Black Adder, who just like comes in and just starts like tearing up the place and just starts, throwing out the rule book and just saying, "Hey, let's just not worry about studying, right? Let's just go out and have fun, and we're going to do it because I said so." And what I find really, really interesting about Fiero is like, this is, he's a proverbial, Prince Charming, right? When he meets Elphaba, like he's just struck by the way that she just backsasses him, right? As opposed to Glinda, who very much kind of plays the proverbial, fawning maiden who just does everything she can to like get his attention by being very dainty and very pretty and all that stuff. That scene at Shiz where she just grabs the guy's book and she just goes up to him while he's looking at the map. I was just wondering, is she holding that book upside down? And like, I thought that would be very funny.
Kick out of that.
I thought that would have been very funny if the prince just like looked and was like, you do know that book is upside down, right? What are you like? Who are you fooling here? But but you mentioned this earlier, Bradley, when it came to that dance, because Glinda is very, very much sold on the idea that Fiero is going to be my date to this dance. Bach, you can Bach off. Hey, you see that girl in the wheelchair? She ain't got nobody. Maybe you can take her because I definitely don't want to be seen with you, you weird little munchkin. And you do feel bad for Bach too, because Bach genuinely cares for her. Like he says later on in Wicked that his heart belongs to Glinda, right? But Fiero, on the other hand, I mean, at least here, you kind of get the sense he's not really entirely sold or interested in Glinda, other than maybe she's a means to an end, right? Whatever that end happens to be. So let's go ahead and dive into that, because the dance is the dance is that turning point where where everything starts to change. And Bradley, you referenced this already, but I want to go ahead and dive into the scene, because initially Fiero decides, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and go to this ballroom and we're going to have a lot of fun, because why not? And Elphaba, she kind of gets invited. I'm not sure how exactly she ends up going, but Glinda decides to give her this witch's hat, or this black hat, because ostensibly she wants to come off as, oh, I'm being a good friend to you, but obviously she's doing the Mean Girls bit where she just wants Elphaba to be, humiliated, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, let's go ahead and dive right in. So what are your guys' thoughts on what transpires with Fiero and everything leading up to the dance, and to that point where we see that turning point where Glinda realizes that, hey, Elphaba may not be a bad person after all. Maybe she's pretty cool.
Yeah. the I will say it is funny that literally the only reason Elphaba goes is because Glinda gives her the hat and says, "You should wear this to the Ozdust Ballroom." Like, she doesn't just want her to wear a hat in the halls of the school and be like, haha, that's a dumb hat. No, she wants her front and center stage. Everyone's gonna laugh at you in the party event of the century. And it really is just timing that makes her. I would be curious. So I mentioned earlier that she ends up feeling bad because this person that she didn't like, that didn't like her, did something really kind for her. I would be curious in the story how Glinda would have responded if that hadn't happened. So if Madame Morrible didn't show up, didn't say you're in the class now because of Elphaba, and then Elphaba still showed up, I wonder if Glinda would have acted differently. That I think would be a big character revelation about, oh, maybe it really is shitty, or no, maybe she really is. I don't know, man. It's so interesting to me that there's so many times where they make fun of Elphaba and she's like, yeah, let's sing a whole song about it. We hate this person. And then as soon as she sees her really like, and then yeah, Fiyero even says like, oh wow, look at her. She doesn't care what anybody thinks. And Glinda doesn't even miss a beat. She's like, of course she does. And it's like, dude, every time I cry, every time I watch this, it is so beautiful. I love it. I love that there are like no words shared between them. It is so sweet. And I like, yeah, the definitive turning point of their relationship, of this story, of where this is going. Because it's so funny that when you think of the fact that the musical ends with them singing For Good, which is this fantastic song about how we've changed each other's lives in such a positive way, and then you start this movie and you're like, wow, they fucking hate each other. I'm interested to see how they get from point A to point Z.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like this turning point. The dance itself is so goofy, but it works. It just works for me.
It's so
it's really,
campy. That's what it is.
it is in like such a refreshing way. Like I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I like that they reference it in the second movie too. I like that comes back for a second. And she wears the hat. She shows up, and it's a very, very, very nice moment. God, you do get in Dancing Through Life at the end of it, you get the thing with Bach where he's singing to Nessa. He's like, Nessa, yes, Nessa, I've got something to confess. Sorry. I was like, oh God, working her name. It's so cheesy. Oh my God. But yeah,
but it's kind of cute at the same time because as much as you want to cringe, you're like, oh, that's kind of sweet, you know.
It is. Bach is. Now I will say, when I watched like I said, I've seen the show twice. I never liked Bach very much. He was very forgettable. And then when he showed up as the Tin Man, so in this, we see a lot of the Tin Man. In the show, I think you see him as the Tin Man twice. When he transforms, and then during the March of the Witch Hunters, he walks in on a platform off of stage, yells his lines about killing her. He references the lion off stage, and then he leaves. That's it. That's all you see of him. Right. But in the movies, I'm like, no, Bach is so much more relatable in this. I really do. The actor that plays him, I also just really enjoy him. Brendon, did you say he's SpongeBob?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was SpongeBob on Broadway before this, so
that's hilarious. But yeah, I thought Bach was great. I think the girl that played Nessa Rose was really good. She doesn't really do a lot, but that character historically doesn't do a lot. But yeah, the dance scene I thought was fantastic. It is still my favorite part of these movies.
I guess a few things for me. One, I get why everyone loves Prince Fiyero. Like, holy shit! Like, he just infatuates everybody. It totally makes sense when he comes on the screen. Absolutely makes sense to me. Bach, I want to point out one thing, right? Because he does have a very tragic turn. What I will say with that is Bach is an absolute simp, right? Like, let's be real here, right? Like, he's hitting above his weight class, right? No offense at all, right? And it just feels like he's infatuated with Glinda the same way that Glinda's infatuated with Fiyero, right? Yeah. Like, it is just, hey, I really like this person. I like the way they look. but they don't really get me as a person, right? So
Fair.
whenever I see Bach, it's tragic what happens to him because obviously, like, because of everything that happens, like between him and Nessa, turns into the Tin Man. But there's a lot of stuff that's out there. Bradley, I will say this though, right? This scene is amazing, right? I love this scene. This whole turn at the dance, I think resonates extremely well. And I love how Glinda is kind of the first one she kind of is the first one that kind of vocalizes, like, Fiero's like, well, how is she like sitting here dealing with this? Like, I can't believe she's not upset. And Glinda's like, no, she is upset. And that was very impactful to me because she gets it, right? She sees that it's not her putting on this hard face, right? I mean, she is doing that, but deep down, it's not because she doesn't care. She does care, but she feels like this is the brave face that she has to put on. It's the same brave face she's had to put on her entire life. So I absolutely felt for that. And you brought up something extremely interesting, right? And this is why this scene is so... I'm on both sides as far as how this scene portrays, because on paper it looks amazing, but I also feel that if things played out a little bit differently, I don't know if it would have worked out the same, right? Because in reality, right, this all started because, Nessa was happy that Bach asked her out, right? Then, Elphaba does the nice thing. It's like, hey, cool. So I'm gonna go tell, Madame Marble about this, and I'm gonna get Glinda in the class. But really, Glinda didn't do this out of the nicest of her heart, right? She was just trying to, like, kind of like, hey, cool, Bach, why don't you go with that chick, right? Because I really want Prince Fiero. I'm trying to like let you off nicely, right? And this is how I'm gonna do it. So kind of the whole thing, it ends on a happy note, but I also feel like the whole sequence is built on lies. And it's one of those things where I kind of struggle with how much the scene should have an impact, because to me, it didn't really earn its right to have that impact, even if I still felt as an audience member, I enjoyed everything that I saw.
Yeah, that's fair. And see, that was one of the things I was talking about earlier, where I like that Glinda saw a good thing for her turn out because of the fact that someone else was nice to her, even though she was mean to them. I think that's a bit of the character development that I like from it, where she was dismissive to Bach, and it started this chain reaction where Elphaba did something really kind for her, even though she was dismissive of Bach. She was a little mean to Nessa. She was really mean to Elphaba, but Elphaba still did this kindness for her. I think is maybe the start of her. Was the phrase, the scales will fall from your eyes.
Yeah.
I feel like that's maybe a little bit of starting to pull back the veil of her character to like see who she really is. Because I do genuinely think that, especially by the end of the show and the end of the second movie, Glinda, I think, is a very good person, and she really wants to be good, and she tries. And I think she tries a lot of times along the way in the second act, but just gets pulled along in a bad way. I think this is the start of her becoming Glinda the good. And it was literally because Elphaba was kind to her when she had almost no reason to be.
Well, genuine kindness too, not simply because she's pink and pretty.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. Yeah.
Brendon, did you want to offer your input on this too?
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of what everybody else said. Obviously,
that's totally fine, man. Totally fine.
Easy to see why Fiero is like the life of the party, fun time stuff. I do like that he and Elphaba have this kind of, how should I put this, this little verbal sparring before he arrives at Shiz for the first time, where Elphaba calls him out for his crap in some ways, but he just keeps on going at it. He even calls her out on some of her crap too. But he's an interesting character for me because he plays up this life of the party thing. You can tell that it's an act in a lot of ways. Like he's just trying to do this whole thing. and make himself like bigger than life, larger than life. He's got this reputation, and he's going to play into it. The interesting thing that Lee brought up about how everything in the Ozdust was kind of built on lies, and how everything was brought about, and how the crux of everybody's relationships changing was brought about on these lies, like between Glinda, Bach, Nessa, everybody. It's kind of an interesting sort of parallel to just Oz in general and the wizard and how everything plays, because everything that the wizard has got going on, everything that Oz is, everything that, for lack of a better phrase, Camelot is based on lies.
Right. It's
On
all an
everything.
illusion. Yeah.
So
That's really cool. I like that.
it's a very cool little parallel to me personally, how everything's built. So I very much enjoy the Ozdust scene, the turn, everything. I feel Bradley is right for the most part in how this is sort of where Glinda's character is coming to turn.
You could just say Bradley's right, and that could be the end of the conversation.
I will say, I think that the scene plays a little too long for me. I think the pacing is just a little too long for me personally, but I think for the most part it works. Dancing Through Life is already a very much like overly long song, just because it's trying to encompass so much of what's happening in the plot at this moment. Like,
Brendon, it says Dancing Through Life, not Dancing Through a Room. Of course, the song is going to be 7 minutes and 50 seconds. Come on.
I also do want to make a note about just the impracticality of the Shiz library. Like, what is that setup?
Yeah, what the fuck?
Yeah.
We keep our books in a tube. What the shit?
I mean, the Library of Alexandria made more sense than that. Let's be honest here.
I got the little hamster wheel going too. It was bizarre.
But it did make for cool choreography, so I'll give it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's about where I'm at on everything we've said so far.
Well, Brendon, to pick up your theme about illusions, I mean, it does take us to where Elphaba gets the invitation to the Emerald City to meet the wizard, because the wizard has heard about her abilities and has decided, you know what, I would like to meet this girl, and I would like to see what's going on here. and wouldn't you believe it, Glinda invites herself along to the whole event. Well, initially she comes off and saying, well, no, this is your thing. This is something that, that you should enjoy. And then Elphaba, in the second act of kindness, asks her, hey, I want you to come with me. Let's come meet the wizard together, and you begin to see the sort of building of the friendship between the two, because, Bradley, to your point, it starts off with, even though this was done as an act of selfishness, it did lead to something good, to where, Elphaba, asks Madame Warble to allow Glinda to attend these sessions. Well, when I say ask, I mean more of like give an ultimatum, really. Like, if she's not in there, I'm out. Like, don't let the door hit you on the way out, bitch, kind of thing. But but this marks another turning point here, because this is where we begin to see, the character, because the characters, for the most part, they've been fermenting, really. Like, we're starting to see this, the seeds of who they will become in Wicked for Good. Kind of, they begin to kind of develop and grow, as the movie progresses, and then but we get to see come to action when they actually get to go to the Emerald City, where we get to see a surprise cameo from Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth when they're doing that song. It kind of reminds me of that scene from Shrek where the hand puppets are singing about what they do in the city of Duloc, But I gotta say, like, first and foremost, what a visually rich experience, right? It's like Stuart Little. It's like you come from a podunk town into the big city, right? It's like it's Bradley, in your case, it's like coming from Concord or wherever into Charlotte, and like, wow, like I've never seen the big city like this. Or Lee coming from Charlotte all the way to New York City, and he's like, wow, like I totally forgot how big this place was. So I want to go ahead and just start talking about like what about what happens, in the Emerald City, because it starts off with everybody being excited and just saying, I can't believe we're going to go meet the wizard. And then things kind of start to go south a little bit quickly,
Yeah. I will also say, so in the stage show of this, you get a little bit of like a lot of people on stage and a lot going on. When you first get to Shiz, you get a lot of it at the end of Dancing Through Life. When One Short Day is in full blast, it is breathtaking what is going on stage. This is the scene I was talking about earlier. I'm like, there's so much stuff going on. People are in like full body costumes and outfits. People are on stilts, like running across stage. I mean, it is insane the stuff that goes on, and it just builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. The obviously the scene with the two originals coming back, that's not the stage show. That little song they sing, that's not the stage show. I have always said that, because we talked about good casting earlier, I'm not particularly good casting for anyone in this show except maybe the wizard. I'm a little young for it. I want to be the guy who, at the end of One Short Day, is like, the wizard will see you now. I want to be that guy. I want to have one line. I will say in this movie, it's Steven Schwartz, the guy who wrote the music.
Yeah.
He's the one who comes out and says the wizard. He does a little tone down. I'd be really big with it because I'm me.
Yeah.
But yeah, One Short Day, when you see it is, I mean, it is breathtaking what's going on stage. And then yeah, unfortunately, man, it goes sour so fast because we have they meet the wizard. He comes out and the giant head and the fire, and it's dramatic. I will say one issue I have with the movies is the voice they use for the wizard speaking through the head. I can't understand a damn word that thing is saying.
It's like Bane,
I mean,
right?
Yeah, I cannot understand a single. I was like, I need the subtitles. I can't understand a thing you're saying. He looks cool, and I will say, Jesus, because we saw the first two in like a regular theater. When I saw for good the second time, it was an IMAX. Mother of God, this dude's voice almost made me come off of my seat. It shook. I was like, I can't believe the whole cruise ship isn't shaking on this. This is insane. But it looks really good, and it does look, the way that it looks in the movie, it looks just like that on stage. I mean, exact same design. Again, the size of a big rig truck when it comes out. But I still am surprised for both how quickly it turns bad, how quickly the wizard shows his hand. I'm always surprised when I watch this at his just brazenness to just sort of be a shitty person and be like, yeah, that's fine. Like, I get that is his character, but it is surprising that he doesn't think, this person might think I'm evil because I just made her curse a bunch of monkeys. I feel like that thought never once crossed his mind. He's like, it'll be fine.
I mean, but to your point too, like he also mentions, I don't know if it's him or Madame Warble. They're like, oh yeah, they'll make great spies, and then she's like, and then Elphaba was like, wait, what? And then they're like, oh wait, no, how about scouts? Scouts a better word.
Yeah,
it's like, dude, you just let the cat out of the bag. Like, what the fuck, bro?
Yeah, that's that sentence about you said the in your head part out loud. You said the thing you're not supposed to say out loud. Like, come on, man. But yeah, I will say that that is one thing in the movies I love so much. Is you get to see that the wizard he's very intelligent. The way that he like tinkers and his inventions, everything he makes is very impressive.
Right.
When he's singing the first thing to them and he's got the yellow brick road, and the imagery of it is fantastic. The way that he designed everything was so good. Then coming up on the color of yellow is very sweet. All of that, I'm like, this is great. And again, it's Jeff Goldblum, like perfect casting. Because honestly, the wizard in the musical, I could not possibly care less about. He doesn't really have very many scenes. He sings wonderful. I'm a sentimental man. He's in the show for 5 seconds at the end, and then he maybe gets a little bit of scene work here, and that's it. That's all he does. And I'm like, you're not in this show enough for me to like you or dislike you, but I don't like your songs very much, so I dislike you.
Right. So the movie kind of gives us an opportunity to see more of him, so we can kind of develop our assessment of what we think of him as a person, right? Because obviously, we're all old enough to remember seeing the original from the 30s, right? Where here he's like this benign person who's just trying to do his best to run Oz. But at the end of the day, I mean, like he's no more powerful than Dorothy is, right? Whereas here, it's
Yeah.
like you kind of have to wonder, like, is there like is he really a shitty person? Is there like are there any ulterior motives? And then boom, like after Elphaba reads from the Grimoire, it's like, oh, okay, well, clearly she has a lot of great use because she can read this ancient grimoire that nobody has been able to read for hundreds and hundreds of years. And now we're going to take these flying monkeys and use them to, I guess, spy on animals or spy on people. I'm not quite sure what they're up about.
The animal thing is the thing. I wish they explained. Why does he hate the animals the way he does?
Yeah.
He does say the line about they need a villain. For people to fall in line, they need a villain.
Yeah, but
I just feel like the animals is I feel like that's a weird one to choose. Why didn't he choose? Never mind. Well, I'm like, why didn't he choose the Munchkins?
Well, I was gonna say it's kind of convenient that Elphaba's there because when Elphaba, I would even say that Elphaba kind of like gets manipulated into doing the things that she does. So then she becomes the convenient villain for everybody to go after, which is a shitty move,
Yeah. I will say this as well. The fact that, we talk a lot about how everything's all hunky-dory, she gets to the Grimoire and then she, does the incantation. I like, and I don't mean this in the way it's going to come across, I like the way, like, the monkeys depict, like, them sprouting the wings is so painful, right? Because you see the horror in her
body
face.
Horror, yeah.
Yeah, like, you see the horror in her face that what she just did, even though it's obviously not her fault, like, she's following along with this thinking that people do this in her best interest, right? The fact that, we see that, and you can tell, like, these monkeys are suffering during this, right? So I think, like, visually being able to see that really just kind of puts it on there, because I think the monkeys just sprout wings and they can just fly. I'd be like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. But knowing that, like, what they're going through is so painful to them, and it's something where, the wizard's like, oh, yeah, the monkeys, they told me they wanted to fly, right? So he's, like, pretty much just speaking for this whole monkey population about what they want to do. So they're, to your point, right, Luka, they're scouts out there. The nice way of putting it, right? The more colorful way of describing it. But I do like how, the way that they depict all this happening, it just kind of turns everything on its head, because it goes from, oh, cool, I'm reading from this Grimoire and I'm doing something that no one's seen before. It's like, oh, I just did something that's horrific, right? And it makes sense why Elphaba has such a negative reaction to everything that happens, just with the way that everything transpires.
Yeah, and that like the body horror and really making it hit. It's interesting that they do it in a very different way with the movie versus the stage show, but it hits both times. In the movie, we see the horror that they're going through, the pain, how bad this is. In the theater show, I mentioned there's the spot where like the back of the stage like falls off and you see them all in cages. What they do in the theater show is he says this one monkey wants to fly. Can you give him the wings? So we only see one guy in the monkey outfit being like, oh, pain. And then she's like, oh, this is great. And that's when he pulls the thing down and realizes, no, you just cast that spell on 50 of these dudes. And that's when you see them all in their cages and they're screaming and they're pulling on things. So it, instead of the body horror part being it's the fact that she did it on a lot of animals and didn't even know it. Like, she had no idea she was performing that spell on like 50 of them. She thought it was just this one. So it is interesting that they do it in a very horrific way in both. Play into their strengths, because the CGI and what they can do in a film, you can make it look pretty gross.
Yeah, well, this is the moment of the movie where, like, it's the eye-open moment. It's where we see everything laid out to us for the first time, because up until this time, everybody's eyes have been closed to what the wizard's got going on. Like, the propaganda has been very effective in, like, oh, the wizard is this benevolent, kind, happy individual that wants to do good for everybody. That's why Elphaba's going to the Emerald City in the first place, because she thinks, oh, the wizard is certainly going to be able to do something to help the animals. to do everything else, not giving any thought whatsoever to, well, who would have the power to be doing this to the animals in the first place. But, youth and naivete, notwithstanding. Even in like The Wizard and I, the entire song is just, oh, the wizard is so good. He can help me with my problems, and we can do all this good together if we just harness my powers for good. So when the wizard comes and tells her, hey, you can help this animal, you can help everybody with all these spells in this book, just read from it. I believe you can, because you have this power that Madame Morrible has told me about. So it's eating of the fruit parallel, and then finding the horror and running away from Eden, sort of thing.
Well, you could also say it's kind of like Pandora's box, because because once that's been done, there's no way you can. And they even say, there's no way to reverse the spell. Once it's done, it's done. Like, you got to live with it now.
Yeah.
So what happens after that is that Elphaba decides, you know what, you're not really a good hombre, wizard. I think
that's an exact quote from the movie. If anyone's curious,
I'm going to take this. I'm going to take this grimoire, and I'm going to get the fuck out of the Emerald City, because you people are horrible. Which leads us to a very to this really elaborate chase where the monkeys are attacking from all sorts of places, and the guards are chasing them, and they try to escape in that hot air balloon, which doesn't go anywhere. And what I really think is interesting too is that is that when we get that final I won't say a confrontation, but the final duet between Elphaba and Glinda, it's almost like this demarcation of where their priorities lie, right? Because Elphaba has decided, I'm going to go on this crusade, I guess for animal rights, but also because I want to expose the wizard as a fraud. And Glinda, she's very much happy with the system. Now, I want to get your guys' input on this. I kind of felt like she was happy with the system, but I think she also felt like, maybe if I stay within the system, I can do some good within it, rather than trying to work outside the system and possibly cause more harm to not only myself but to others, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
Oh, sorry.
No, I think there's an aspect of that to it. I think because even in part 2, we'll talk about it, I'm sure. She's talking about how they're working within the system, and it doesn't do a lot of good to ostracize yourself like Elphaba has by going against the grain.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a solid read for it, I think.
Lee?
I have to admit, I was a little bit... I kind of saw this in a lot of ways, right? Because to me, this was a turning point where I really wanted Glinda to go with her, but I also understood why she was withdrawn or unwilling to go, right? Because I think it was maybe just a bridge too far for her to kind of get swept up in everything. Because, we have the dance, and you start to see that change in Glinda's character, right? Like, she's, starting to be open with Elphaba, and I think she starts to grow as a character. And something that, at least for me as an audience member, when I see her, like, Elphaba's like reaching out the hand and be like, hey, come with me, her reluctance to do so, it kind of made me feel a little bit like, gosh, like you're developing a lot as a character, but then when push comes to shove, you seem to be okay with just kind of existing with a system, to your point, Luka, that's broken. I think something, at least for myself, right? And I think back to, hey, what could I have done differently? Because I do feel like Glinda wants to do something more. I would have loved to see her stay behind in the Emerald City, but she stays behind because she has to protect Elphaba, right? I think that would have added a different dynamic if, like, let's say, Elphaba's like struggling to get to the broomstick, and Glinda has to, like, attack people to, like, get her to go away, and Elphaba has to leave her behind. It's not that Glinda didn't want to go with her, it's that she kind of got wrapped up in the situation, but she did everything in her power to get Elphaba free, right? To me, that would have showed a lot of her character coming to fruition. I feel like with this, she plays it really safe. And I don't know, I just wasn't, I guess, as big of a fan looking at it. I think there was maybe ways that you could have shown Glinda being more, I would say, assertive in showing her character developing than what happened. And that'll be, that's maybe a hill I'll die on, but I'm willing to kind of die on that hill.
No, I get that, because ultimately you do end up, for a good chunk of the second movie and the second act, you have the two main characters. One of them is very active, one of them is very passive. Elphaba is I will say, in the show you don't see the whole her attacking Yellow Brick Road, you just hear about it. But you do have one who is very actively standing up to, quote unquote, the man, and then the other one is very passive and just kind of goes along with it up until the very end. Literally up until after she thinks Elphaba is gone, then she has to step up to be the active one. I will say, if it were me, if I were writing this story, I definitely agree with what you said. I would have had maybe just a line or two at some point in time, or maybe a little throwaway scene where Glinda maybe passed some information along to Elphaba. Maybe was like trying to help her while still being in the city. I think something like send a letter, something that would have shown her being a bit more active in what's going on. I would have really appreciated that. As opposed to, she just, in the movie, I do think they do a pretty good job of showing that she kind of gets caught up in it. It's hard to read for me in the movie, but in the show, whenever Nessa gets killed by the house, she had no idea that's what was going to happen. Like, she did not, that was not part of the plan. And then when it does happen, it takes her a little while to figure out that it was Madame Morrible that did it. And that's when she really starts to turn, and that's when she goes to Elphaba.
But do you think, Bradley, do you think it's because up until that point, she still believes that, that these people are still working for the greater good? I mean,
yes.
maybe we don't really understand like the full scale of their plan, but but we just got to trust that maybe they're doing it, for, even though we may not like it, they're doing it for the best of reasons.
Yeah, I genuinely do think that. I think we especially see that in the second movie, when there's the scene where this late in the game, she's still, right before her wedding, where she's still trying to convince Elphaba, come be with us, don't fight us, come, like, we're doing so much good, why can't you see this? I really do think it is not until Nessarose dies and she figures out who did it that she's like, okay, this is not what I thought it was. So yeah, I do get her going along with it, but I agree with what Lee said. I kind of wish she had been a little bit more active up to that point. She is a little maybe too go with the flow for me.
So let's go ahead and wrap up our review of part one here. What are what are our initial thoughts on the first part? Does it hit all the marks, or does it kind of like leave us wanting a little bit more, or do we feel like maybe they could have trimmed the fat here and there to kind of make it a bit more streamlined?
I'll go first. I think it was great. I was a little nervous because typically in theater shows, Act 1 is usually a fair chunk longer than Act 2. So if you've got a show that's 2.5 hours, pretty good chance your first act is going to be around 1:45, hour 45, hour 50, and then your second act is going to be a fair chunk shorter. I've had some shows where it's like 2.5 hours and that first act is 2 hours and 10 minutes. So when you come back after intermission, you're like, okay, baby, let's wrap this up. I was a little nervous going to the second movie. I'm like, do they have enough to make a full-length movie? But a lot of the pacing stuff I enjoyed a lot in the first one. I was a little worried they were going to add a lot of stuff, like a lot of songs. They always want to add at least one song so they can be nominated for the Oscar for Best Original Song. Les Mis did it too. Every musical movie is going to add at least one. I thought I was worried they were going to have a lot of those, which they didn't, which I appreciate. I thought Defying Gravity was fantastic. It hit just like I thought it would. I do love the videos that people have made about the guardsman being there, because she's flying around while she's singing. So that's like what the guardsman's hear. It's like her like starting to sing, and then it gets really quiet, and it gets really loud again as she comes back. I get a kick out of those. But yeah, I thought the first one, a lot of the issues I had with the second movie, I did not have as much with the first one. I think most of the casting is really good. I enjoyed most of the characters. Yeah, freaking Jonathan Bailey is so charming. Sometimes he almost makes me think of a young Jeff Goldblum. Like sometimes when I see them in interviews and whatnot, I'm like, this is a little uncanny valley for me sometimes. Like I'm not sure you guys aren't actually the same person. But I really enjoyed the world building. I love the imagery of the first one. Yeah, the first movie I think was really solid. The second one, I'm not gonna feel quite the same way about. But the first one I really enjoyed. I thought Defying Gravity was great. I think a lot of the vocal stuff they did in it was fantastic. So yeah, I was a big fan. I left very, very happy after the first one.
I also really enjoy this movie, like for all of it, for the faults that it has. They don't really take me out of it too much. The only real criticisms I have outside of like a minor, I could use another little sprinkle of plot here, a little bit of motivation there. It's totally aesthetic for me. Some of the lighting in the movie really throws me off, and again, that's all aesthetic. Especially, it's especially noticeable to me in like the Dancing Through Life sequence where you see the backlight coming in through like the windows of the library and stuff like that, and it just kind of blows out part of the frame.
Mm-hmm.
That's an aesthetic choice that a lot of people make in movies nowadays. It's not for me. I don't like it, but
You're allowed to be wrong. It's fine.
It's neither here nor there. The other thing that I have just a little bit of a issue with, and it continues for me in the next movie, is it feels like sometimes when Elphaba is just having a number by herself, that they're leaning a little too much on like the CGI and the set dressing to kind of make everything interesting. And
Yep.
Cynthia Erivo's singing, like I just don't think they're shot very effectively either during The Wizard and I or during what's that song called, Bradley? The one
Defying Gravity?
No. Where she's singing about Fiyero.
Oh, I'm Not That Girl.
Yes. During the I'm Not That Girl as well, I felt it. And I know John Chu has the ability to shoot these things. For me, I feel like the two sequences where Elphaba was singing by herself were a little boring because of the way that they were shot.
So it was a missed opportunity, right?
Yeah, that's what I felt. Everything else, all the group shots, all the group songs, dance sequences, fantastic, phenomenal, no notes. But I feel like when Elphaba is by herself just singing, they're relying too much on the set dressing and Cynthia Erivo's singing, which both are very good.
And I will say, I remember us talking about that after we left the first movie, and that was a big point you and I disagreed on. And I think it's just because I come from the theater side, so I'm used to a lot of big solos really are going to be someone standing still.
Yeah.
Maybe walking around stage a little bit, but it's not a big grandiose thing. So like, I remember after The Wizard and I, you were like, that was really boring. And I was like, I thought it was great. What the so I definitely think that, and again, you coming from the film side, me coming from the theater side, I definitely get that being a difference of what we're looking for. Me, I'm pretty used to it. But yeah, I definitely remember you having that point after we watched the first one in theaters. The mileage may vary.
Yeah, the film versus theater discussion. Yep.
Yeah.
Lee, you have any final thoughts before we go to scores?
Yeah. I mean, Defying Gravity, right, was such a great song. I just absolutely loved it when I was hearing it. It had so much impact with the characters. And I absolutely loved it, right? Like that was the absolute right way to end the first part of the movie, right? I don't know play-wise now for like Bradley, for you that watched it, when did the first act end? Did it end at the same point that the first movie
exact
did?
same point.
Okay. Make tons of sense, right? That is the absolute right place to end that, right? I thought that was superb, right? And I love how just from like a visual aspect, like this is truly breathtaking, right? I believe that this won probably production design at the Oscars. I'm sure it won a few other things. But, you know, the costumes, the look, I mean, everything it feels very lived in, right? Like they created this world, and I could easily see it being a place that you could go to, right? Tangibly go into and be able to live in it, right? I love the look, right? And if we didn't have stuff like Avatar, that's probably like pushing the bounds of CGI to an extreme. Like this is absolutely about as peak of a look as you can have in a movie, right? I absolutely enjoyed it. I think my biggest challenge, right, as once again I have to put my movie critic miter on, right? It absolutely feels like one part of a two-part story, right? Which I appreciate, right? I understand that that's what they had to do, right? So I had to go with it, right? So, when I looked at it, it felt like a great way to end, but it also, from like a movie standpoint, the only person that I felt very confident with that has done a whole lot with this is Elphaba, right? And obviously her ending song shows so much about what she's capable of doing. I absolutely did enjoy it. But I think for me, like if I'm trying to look at it as a closed story, there's obviously a lot of things that I would hope that they would have done maybe a little bit differently or set things up more for the second viewing, which why, I think grading this is so challenging because you are grading one part of a two-part story. So it's like, hey, what's your grade for halfway of doing a film? And it's like, well, it's kind of hard to do that, right? Because we don't know what the second half has. So I think grading this is going to be very different than most other things that you're going to grade.
Well, so Bradley, why don't you do us the honors and kick us off? What would be your final score out of 5 for part 1?
Dude, I'm so biased. 5, 10 out of 5. I will say Wicked was my favorite musical for a very long time. Like it was absolutely it's still one of my favorites. And for me, I've been such a fan of the show for so long, getting to see that show and that world come to life on screen. 10 out of 5. I was so easy on this, and I'm like, they could have honestly shit the bed on a lot of this stuff, and I'd be like, I'm good. It was great. No notes. But I still do think, even from more of a critic standpoint, I think if I was not so familiar with the show, I think I would have a lot more complaints about this. Even when we were talking earlier about like Ariana Grande and the type of acting she's doing, for me, it's so on point just because of the way I've seen that character done on stage. So I do think that has definitely colored my opinion of a lot of this stuff. But for me, I thought it was a fantastic adaptation of the stage show. A lot of it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Getting to see Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth come back, hit in just the right way. Steven Schwartz being there, hit just the right way. So yeah, for me, it's a 5 out of 5. Not going to be the same for the second one, but the first one, I walked out of it being like, hell yeah, this was so much better than I thought it was going to be. I had an absolute blast.
So real quickly, Bradley, how did you feel about that dance that they were doing in the Emerald City, where Kristen Chenoweth was dancing with Ariana Grande and Idina Menzel was dancing with Cynthia Erivo? Like, did that kind of like scratch that nice itch for you right there?
It was hard to see through the tears, yeah. But no, I'm good. That part did not get me. But it was very, very sweet. It felt very much like a passing the torch type thing.
Yeah.
To get to see that in the film was very good. The fact that the two of them, Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth, are still kind of like, even their characters are a little bitchy towards each other at some point, I think was really nice. So yeah, that I thought was very sweet. I really enjoyed getting to see that. Because they do all sorts of reunions and stuff for Wicked. I mean, those two get together every few months and record a new version of one of the songs from Wicked. So it is, I don't know. Part of it I feel like would have hit a little bit better if they didn't do that. Because sometimes you see someone where it's like someone was in a show that was really popular. Like if Crawford came in for like a Phantom revival, all of a sudden people would lose their fucking minds because he hasn't done anything with it in God knows how long. Because these two have been so involved with everything Wicked for the last, 15, 20 years. It's still really nice, but, I think it's just sort of a Tuesday for them at this point. Like, another Wicked project? All right. But yeah, I did really enjoy getting to see them in this, and I thought their scene was very sweet, and it also got to flesh out a fair bit of backstory that you don't get in the theater show. In the theater, he's just like, this is a magic book, read it. You're like, all right, cool. I need nothing else.
Either one of you guys can offer your scores next.
Yeah, I'm gonna give this one maybe like 4.3 out of 5. I really enjoy this movie. I think it is really good. It far exceeded my expectations, honestly, in terms of what I thought it was, because in the long history of adapting musicals from stage to television, not a lot of them are done very well, I feel like. So I was very hesitant on this one, especially because they've been trying to make this movie for like 10, 15 years at this point, and they kept failing and failing and failing, and then it kept coming back in different iterations. Like I said, my major complaints were very minor. It was just some of the filmmaking choices during certain songs. It was some of the lighting choices that were made. But overall, I think the performances were strong. I think the music was very well done. I think the set dressing, CGI, everything all blended together. I'm really disappointed that they just broke down all the sets that they built for this, because they could have made that a new like Shire thing where you could have just gone and visited it. But
yes.
Yeah, I really enjoy this one. We'll see how the next one holds up, but yeah.
Thanks for saying that, Brendon, because when I was referencing Lived In, that's exactly the first thing. Like, I can imagine, like, you could still go to the Shire, right? Because it's something that's still, there, right, where they have the set. So that is a shame to hear that they unfortunately broke it down. So, so for me, I'm probably gonna catch some flack for it, right? But I will give this a 3 out of 5, right? I think.
Hey, Luka, can you remove Lee from the chat immediately? I appreciate it.
I got producing powers. I will edit this out.
Oh man, okay. Oh, look at that. Crushing my voice, just like we watched how you should have crushed the voice of other people, and here we are doing it in front of everybody. Shame on all of you. So, but I think for me, right, the reason I had such a hard time grading this is because I know I'm looking at just one part of a 2-part film. So it's very unfair. Like, I think about like character motivations, how do they go? A lot of that to me is saved for the second film, right? So I went with a 3.5, and I think that's primarily because there's definitely aspects of the second film that I wasn't a fan of, right? And I think because of how I look at the second film, that probably colored me more for this performance, because I think if I liked the second film more, I would have seen a higher score from this, because there's things out there that are just phenomenal, right? We talked about how it looks, the singing. I would admit that initially the way Glinda acted was very off-putting to me. I was not a fan of it. But as I rewatched it, I was like, you know what? I'm kind of enjoying this, right? Because she is someone that she kind of puts on a show, right? Like, she acts over the top, but that's a part of her persona. And I, initially when I watched, I was like, God, like, this is kind of like a little bit cringy to watch. But as I watched the second time, you're like, you know what? I actually enjoy this because I could see that being a part of her character.
Yeah, it starts to grow on you after a while.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It definitely grows, right? And I think that, the animal discrimination angle of it, it felt like maybe it was a little bit too forced, right? Or maybe a little bit too prevalent, because you have such a unique story here, especially with the relationship between Elphaba and Glinda, that I felt like you have enough story there to go about it, right? And just the idea that, Oz is kind of like, not as picturesque as maybe people think it is. And it's kind of, covering up a lot of cracks. But I think it was something I was absolutely happy that I watched it. I just wish that, and I guess spoilers for the second review, I wish the second one maybe laid it a little bit more than what it did. So that's my final take on the first part.
I'm gonna give it a 3.6 out of 5. As a layman, I'm not as in depth in knowledge as Bradley is. I'm just gonna point that out right now. But just like with Brendon, like I agree, it's a visually pleasing movie. Like, Everything about it is just so rich in the way that it's designed. And I'll say this too. I love the fact that you get to see the scope of Oz, right? You're not just seeing just the Emerald City. You're not just seeing just Munchkinland or anything like that. You get to see what everything is like, and you also get a chance to see like, hey, the Emerald City isn't just this big green tower. It's an actual city with people living in it and living their lives and doing things. Lee, just to piggyback off what you said, initially I didn't care for it, but having watched it a few times, it starts to grow on you, and you begin to think to yourself, well, this is actually not so bad. I still have an issue with Ariana Grande playing Glinda. I'm going to stick to my guns and say she comes off as shallow and vapid, and even by the end of the movie, I kind of feel like she doesn't have any courage. She lacks the courage and conviction, and I think it comes down to the fact that she just doesn't share the same convictions as Elphaba, and I feel like Elphaba wants her to feel the same way that she does, which anybody can understand. If you feel passionate about a cause or something, you want your friends to feel the same way that you do, but that's not always the case, so I will give them props for that. But yeah, other than that, I just feel like it was a really, really adequate movie. I will say this too. I feel like what we see in the second movie is a complete stark contrast, and I feel like it and obviously here they're two different movies, but it's like you kind of have to wonder at times, are these the same people that we have come to know in the first movie? But that's something that we'll definitely get into with that. So guys, let's go ahead and take 5 because I need to use the restroom for a bit, and then we'll reconvene to do part 2.
All right, sounds good.
All right, see you in 5.